Welcome. In this video, we will discuss about the electricity rights of consumer rule 2020. So recently, the cabinet has approved the right of consumers rules in terms of electricity, and they are very important. So as a right, so this particular rules define what all rights as a consumer you have from the distribution companies who are into the service of providing electricity. So for an example, just try to form an analogy with terms of your internet provider, whatever internet provider you are using for your Wi-Fi. For an example, if you are not getting that service properly, you have all the provision to directly go and contact them, raise the complaint and all these things. Such kind of rights are still not very much available for the people who were utilizing electricity. In fact, not very long ago we have thought that it is like a way of life where we have to live with few of the hours being cut off. So this is something, these rules are very important to provide more powers to the consumer in terms of the services they are going to get from the electricity distribution companies. So let's start this video. We will try to understand what are the various provision of this rules are, as well as we'll also try to understand what changes. So let's start. This will make the distribution companies more accountable to the consumer. So before that, or before these rules were explicitly mentioned, it was more like they could get away with it. So they could power shed the electricity, and there was no proper channel or forum through which the consumers can hold them accountable. Now this is going to ensure compliance. The government will apply penalties that will be credited to the consumer account. Now think for an example, if they are not providing a minimum standard of service to the consumer will be credited a amount, and that is in form of the penalty which the government has put on the company. So the government can penalize the distribution companies. So government can penalize, and that penalized money would directly go into the account of consumer. So the money will finally be getting credited into the account of the consumer. So this is how it's gonna be. This will also help in ease of doing business. Now you will ask how ease of doing business came into picture. So this particular rule also talks about how the connection, reconnection or any kind of modification will be done. So this also have provision about the new connection, for an example. So the kind of paperwork, or maybe the kind of amount you have to pay to get a new connection, and the time you have to wait. So all these things are streamlined under the new law. Once these things are streamlined, definitely it is going to improve the ease of doing business also. For your UPSC perspective, there is an index which is generated by the World Bank, Ease of Doing Business Index, and India has been performing really well. So if you look at the various years since 2015, you will see India has been able to make a sharp increase in its rank in Ease of Doing Business Index, which is released by World Bank. So these are the very basic detail, very few side topic you can consider, you should know. Now let's come back to our topic where we were talking about that how it's going to improve the ease of doing business. Now it will also ensure that new electricity connection, refunds and other services are given in a time-bound manner. And as I just mentioned right now, this time-bound manner, this possibility to reach out to the service provider is what is actually going to help in easing the ease of doing business. So these rules are actually very, if they are able to get implemented in their letter and spirit, it will give a lot of power to the consumer, and eventually the ideal or the goal for these rules is that the overall service probability of the electricity improve across the country. Now let's go ahead and look into the other section, like what is the area, what all is mentioned inside the rule. So first of all, rights and obligation. Rights of whom? Rights of consumers. We have a right to get proper electricity service. That is our right. We are paying for it. Like every month there is an electricity bill you pay. So you have certain right by the sheer amount of it that you are asking for a service, you are getting a service, then you have certain right that you should be delivered with minimum service. So we have rights. Then obligation. Obligation of whom? Obligation of distribution companies. So these companies is going to have some kind of obligation towards the consumer, that at least the minimum standard they have to provide. Release of new connection and modification in existing one. Now this is going to be streamlined. The companies have to give a new connection in a time bound manner. So there is in fact even a provision that the new connection in the urban area or metro city need to be done within 7 days, and in rural days it should not be beyond 30 days. So these are the time limits which has been mentioned in the rules itself. So it is time bound. They have provided that within 7 days, if there is a question of a new connection of any house, then the distribution committee should be able to provide them with the connection within 7 days in metros and 30 days in rural areas. Then metering arrangement, no new connection should come up without meter. So this is again the responsibility of companies, that they have to provide the meter, and there has to be proper metering arrangement made, so that the like any connection which is already there or any modification has been made on that will be able to be done through the companies itself. Then there is option of billing and payment. So this rules specifically says that company should provide both online as well as offline option. So there has to be offline option of paying the bill as well as the online option of paying the bill when you are going for the connection. Reliability of supply, again this is something which has been specifically mentioned in the rules, that the continuous 24/7 supply need to be maintained until or unless there is a extreme condition, or even in those scenarios some kind of mechanism should be in place. So this is reliability of supply is also the obligation of the distribution companies. Then consumer as prosumer. Now this is an interesting concept. What does this actually means? So look at over here, consumer as prosumer. Prosumer is actually a word which is made up of, you can understand, you can guess. So basically it is made up of producer plus consumer. So don't let the consumer being only the consumer, they can also be the producer. How producer? Like for through a way of photovoltaic, your sunroof. So basically at your roof you could have the solar energy photovoltaic cells. So rooftop solar energy is something they can also produce, and that is also has been mentioned in the new rules. So that consumer can also be prosumer, where they are producing electricity through the rooftop solar energy, and apart from that they can obviously behave as they have all the rights of a general consumer as well. So this is again something interesting, you could say, has been introduced in the new laws. Now let's see what are the other areas. So standards of performance of license. So again any company will get the license only when there are certain standards of performance has already been provided to them. So they has to maintain at least a minimum level of standard of service. For an example, you can think around the line that you are not giving fluctuating voltages, you are uh, not having any reliability of supply. All these things could eventually lead to bad experience for the consumer, and that is why this is not encouraged. Then there is also a mechanism of grievance redressal mechanism, which is very important. As of now, like for an example, in Bangalore there is no proper channel to reach out to Bescom, that is the company which deal with it. Though they have a number, but that is not very easily reachable. They have the Twitter account where they do reply at times, but still there is nothing like portal wise where you know that there will be a time bound response to your complaint. So for that purpose, the electricity rules, which is like 2020, they specifically mention that there has to be a grievance redressal mechanism where the consumer should be able to get their complaints resolved. And finally, there has to be a call center for consumer services. Like if I have any issues with the kind of electricity I am getting, or if I'm not getting it at all, or if I want to modify the load for an example, all these things could be dealt with the customer service through the call center. Like we have call center for various other services, like for banking, for internet providing, for an example. So similarly, there has to be a call center for consumer services in case of electricity also. So these are, you can, if you actually look at the whole ambit, these rules are very progressive in their nature, and if implemented properly, they will really help the consumer to get more reliable supply of electricity from the companies. Now I hope you understood everything we discussed so far. Now let's just quickly revise. So there is a penalty of up to 1 lakh rupees on Power Discom if they are not meeting up to the expectations of the consumer. Stringent timeline for connection, disconnection, reconnection and shifting. We just discussed that how these all new connection modification and everything has been made more stringent and time bound in the present rule. Then there is a compensation for no power supply beyond a particular duration. So it's not like that the supplier could just go ahead and say that there won't be electricity for 2 days, for an example. So such kind of things are not acceptable in a metro area, for instance. If that is the case, the compensation would be provided to the consumer's account directly. Interruption in supply beyond limit, that is also there, like though there is not what you can say 2 days gap of non electricity, but it's like frequent interruption, every half an hour there is a power cut. So such kind of things, if it is there, again this will be something which will ask the consumer will get a compensation for. Then there is penalty for delays also. Change in consumer category or load. So for an example, if any consumer want to change its load, then if you are not doing it, or if the company is delaying the process, again the company has to pay the penalty. Or change in consumer details. For an example, the consumer changes mobile phone, or maybe some other information has to be changed regarding the consumer and the companies are not changing it, again there is a penalty. Replacement of defective meter, if that is also they are not doing, again there is a penalty. And we just discussed that these penalties, those are imposed by government, they will not remain with government and will be credited to the account of consumer. So penalties will be imposed by government, they will be credited to consumer and will not be with the government. So these are the various salient features of these rules. I hope you have understood them. They are important from your examination point of view in terms of how the present government is trying to provide more power to the consumer. In that regard, go ahead and look at the Consumer Protection Act, also Consumer Protection Act of 2020, and what are amendments have been made over there. So these are certain things you need to intertwine and connect to be able to write proper answer in your mains examination. So I hope you like this video. If you have any doubt, feel free to drop a comment. Thank you.